So where we last left off in the previous video, I installed the side fin boxes and sealed the surfboard. In this video, I'm going to glass the bottom of the longboard. And if you're new here, this is a build series for a longboard. So go check out my other videos for this build. This here is a little marking tool, marking gauge I guess, that I created out of just a block of foam. It's just an L. I measured in about 1.25 inches. I've cut out a little groove here for a pencil. I'm just going to put my pencil in like that. I'm going to tape that on. I really should just keep this around. I, for whatever reason, always make a new one every time I make a board. I'm going to use this to draw out where I'm going to do my cut lap. You could drill a hole if you want. Anyways, it's a pretty simple tool. So I'm just going to take my marking gauge. I'm going to hold it perpendicular to the board, and then I'm just going to draw all the way down the side of the board. I'm going to be covering this with a pin line anyway, so I don't really care about my pencil mark. But if you care about the pencil mark, you could just not sharpen the pencil. You could just have it so it just leaves a little indentation in the foam. Just a light indentation. Now it's time to lay down some masking tape around the line that we just drew out around the perimeter of the board. This will allow us to be able to do a cut lap. So we're going to laminate the bottom of the board first, and then the excess will end up on the deck. We're going to trim around that tape line, remove that excess fiberglass, and then I'm going to do on the deck patch, or this opposite side where the cut lap is, I'm going to be able to do a tint job on that piece of fiberglass. And then I'm going to put another coat of fiberglass on top of that. So I have a bunch of creases here. It's really important when you add your next level of tape to overlap over those creases, or else because of capillary action, the epoxy can wick into and on top of the board because it can go through the tape. Out of tape in a pandemic. My glassing schedule is going to be 6 ounce on the bottom, and I'm going to do a double 6 on the top. The fiberglass that I'm using for the longboard is S2 glass instead of E glass. It's supposed to have a 40% higher tensile strength and with a lower weight. Here I'm taping closed the fin boxes as they get glassed over, and then they're sanded or cut open at a later time. fiberglass is cut so that it overlaps the tape that we just put down on the deck of the surfboard. Also, don't forget to wear a respirator, as when you cut fiberglass, little tiny pieces of the fiberglass become airborne, and that's not great for your lungs. So back here, I'm going to do a patch on the tail to strengthen up where the fin boxes attach. Now you can do little patches around just the fin boxes, but I'm just going to do a whole patch because I'm going to do a large fin box right in the center here. Also, I've tape closed the future fin boxes too, so no resin will get down into the slots or on the grub screw, and this is just going to get laminated over. And then at the end, when we're done, we're going to cut that open. Here I've cut up a bunch of the scrap pieces of fiberglass, and I'm going to use those later to wipe off my squeegee when I'm laminating the board. So it's a really great way, these are nice and clean, to clean off your squeegee. So back here I'm going to do 2 relief cuts, and I'm going to take out a triangle here because this is kind of like a corner. So you do a cut like that, cut like that over here. So this will fold really nice like that. I'll take a wedge out right here, kind of like that, so that'll fold under. So what will happen here is these two will fold in like that, and then this one will fold under like that. Alright, let's glass. I got the fiberglass all laid out. I put my logo at the back. I've signed the board. Now I'm going to mix up some epoxy and let's laminate. Fiberglass will actually start giving this surfboard structure and strength, and it starts becoming a fully formed object that eventually we'll be able to surf. So yeah, glassing is probably my favorite part. And sanding, as I mentioned in other videos, is probably my least favorite. Alright, let's get to it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's really important to glass above 15 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit for my American friends, but very important. Don't glass below that because the epoxy won't flow right, and also it's a lot more comfortable to work in, but the epoxy won't set properly, and it'll just give you some problems. So, you know, I recommend like room temperature, 20 to 25 degrees Celsius probably, just so that the epoxy flows, works really nice. You'll just have a much better experience. I'm going to weigh out 400 grams of resin and then multiply it by 0.446 to get my hardener amount. Don't know if you can see here, but there's little blobs of epoxy down there, meaning that the epoxy has gelled. So I need to re-liquefy the epoxy. So I'm going to heat it in a water bath, but you can also do it in a microwave as well. So you can see here, this is after microwaving, and look how easy it flows. It's not all goopy. Right now I have the jug of resin in a big pot of water just to warm it up because it won't fit in the microwave. Alright, after a little intermission of re-liquefying the epoxy, now you can see it pours really nice. It's not, it's moving around in the jug really good. I couldn't put it in the microwave because the jug was just a little too big. I'm going to pour out about 400 grams. Maybe I'll do 450 actually. I don't want to run out. I'll do 450 grams. Okay, that poured a lot better. Alright, now it's time to mix the hardener. I'm using a brand new jug. Alright, from here on out I'm going to stick my respirator on and I'm just going to start glassing. I don't really need to do too much narration here. I'm going to use a nice wide squeegee spreader. This is a Bondo one. I'm using Bodywork, but you can get purposely made ones as well. So I'm going to add roughly 200 grams of resin. I do want to mention something about how the professionals do glassing, especially surfboards made with polyester resin. Here I'm wetting out the rails. Now ideally, I would have a ton of resin and just let it flow over the edges and back into the bucket, with a lot of it also going onto the floor. In the industry, they call this method a waterfall, but in my opinion, it's also kind of wasteful too. Since I use epoxy resin on my boards, that would be like super expensive. In comparison, polyester resin is several times cheaper than epoxy. A professional shop would probably use half a gallon of resin just to laminate the bottom, whereas I'm just using under maybe a liter of resin, not very much at all. The compromise is it does take me a bit longer to wet out the fiberglass, but I also have much less waste. Anyways, food for thought in case any of you were wondering. There is a difference between how a professional does it and how someone like me, a hobbyist, does it. Before wrapping the rails, be sure to look over all of the fiberglass, that it's evenly saturated. Avoid having any spots that are dry or any spots that have pooling resin. When wrapping the rails, I like to start from the middle of the board and work to the nose of the board, and then from the middle of the board to the rear of the board. I leave the nose and the tail sections as the last parts that I wrap. All right, it's been about 3 hours, 4 hours. The board is not sticky. I'm going to flip the board and then I'm going to cut around the tape and remove the cut lap. Also, always wear gloved hands when touching the board now. You don't want to get any oils or anything off your hands onto the board because that'll cause adhesion issues later. Ideally, you would do something called a zipper cut here if you were using polyester resin, where you pull up the tape and glass and have it perpendicular to the surface, and then just run a razor along the tape. It makes for a really nice clean cut. But epoxy resin is a bit harder to work with, so you need to let it harden up enough so that you can cut it without messing up the glass job. It's what I like to call the transition period for epoxy is very narrow, from when it becomes sticky to hardened. So the zipper cut is a lot harder to do with epoxy. I just let the epoxy harden slightly and then cut and pull the tape. It's best to keep checking to see if the epoxy is hard to the touch, but is still a tiny bit soft, and then you can remove the cut lap. It just makes it a lot easier. I usually do it about 3 to 4 hours after glassing depending on the temperature, which can affect how quickly the epoxy hardens. Alrighty, I'm going to end the video here. I thought I could do the glassing all in one video, but the next video I'm going to do a tinted deck inlay. So thanks for watching, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.